Representative Ms. POU sharply criticized Secretary Noem for freezing, delaying, and cutting critical federal counterterrorism funds, warning that these actions compromise public safety and undermine constitutional oversight. She emphasized that political interference in funding decisions puts communities at risk and erodes trust in federal agencies.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and to our ranking member. Yes, indeed, we've spoken a great deal and learned many things here today, some of which are still going unanswered, many questions that all of us still have. And there are a vast number of threats that endanger our homeland, from increasingly sophisticated state-sponsored terrorist networks to evolving technologies. Our law enforcement agencies are engaging criminals on multiple fronts and facing significant demands every single day. Next year, there will be an increasingly heightened threat environment in my district in northern New Jersey as we host the World Cup. Federal counterterrorism grant funding is absolutely critical in keeping our communities safe against the evolving threat environment. This is why I have been so deeply disturbed by the decision of Secretary Noem to freeze, delay, and cut billions of dollars in federal counterterrorism grant funds. In February, her department, DHS, froze billions of dollars in counterterrorism grants that had already been awarded to states and cities. This decision left state and local public safety organizations unable to access critical funding. DHS then ignored legal deadlines for releasing this year's installment of the $1.5 billion for these counterterrorism programs. And when DHS finally released this funding, she abruptly and illegally slashed funding to states with Democratic governors like New Jersey. States and localities have sued in federal court for funding owed by the federal government that was appropriated for them by Congress. In October, I sent a letter to Secretary Noem, and if she was here, I would be saying this directly to her, signed by all of my Democratic colleagues in New Jersey's delegation, demanding that she stop playing politics with federal counterterrorism funding and immediately restore New Jersey's allocation. Specifically, I'm referring to the 50% cut to New Jersey's allocation of the Homeland Security Grant Program, which includes the Urban Area Security Initiative and the State Homeland Security Program. This is the single largest preparation grant program in the Federal Emergency Management Agency. New Jersey has relied on these federal grants to respond and prepare against terrorist attacks. When she published the notice of funding opportunities for the Homeland Security Grant Program, she stated that her intent to allocate this funding was going to be based on statutory risk assessment and an analysis of relative risk to terrorism faced by the 100 most populous areas in the country. Under this process, New Jersey was preliminarily allocated around $19 million, but DHS final award notification, our state received just $9 million. The final award notification failed to explain why such drastic cuts were made. Instead, she simply stated that it was done, quote, per DHS directive. To this day, we have still not received, I have not received a response to my letter. And I absolutely cannot understand and am so incredibly disappointed by the fact that this administration continues to try and attempt to walk all over this body. Congress is Article 1 branch, and we demand that we we've received the respect that is due and that she respond to the questions, and that is her responsibility and her job. Mr. Chairman, I yield back. Thank you.
Representative Ms. Poe's statement delivers a thorough critique of the Department of Homeland Security under Secretary Kristi Noem, focusing on the consequences of frozen, delayed, and arbitrarily cut federal counterterrorism funding. From the outset, POU frames the discussion in terms of real-world public safety. She underscores that law enforcement agencies are grappling with increasingly sophisticated state-sponsored terrorist networks, evolving criminal technologies, and a constantly shifting threat environment. In her district of northern New Jersey, the upcoming World Cup is expected to create a particularly heightened security environment, making federal counterterrorism grant funding crucial for preparation, coordination, and response. By highlighting these concrete risks, POU grounds her critique in practical security concerns rather than abstract political disagreements. She then details the troubling actions taken by DHS, starting with the freezing of billions of dollars in counterterrorism grants that had already been awarded to states and localities. This decision, according to POU, left critical agencies without access to resources that had been appropriated by Congress, undermining their ability to operate effectively. Beyond the freeze, she points out that DHS ignored legal deadlines for releasing the next installment of funding, and when the funds were eventually dispersed, they were arbitrarily reduced, disproportionately affecting states led by Democratic governors, including New Jersey. POU frames these actions as both a legal and political problem. Not only were deadlines and statutory obligations violated, but the selective cuts suggest the use of federal authority for partisan ends rather than neutral administration of programs intended to protect public safety. POU highlights specific figures to illustrate the scale of the problem. New Jersey's preliminary allocation under the Homeland Security Grant Program was around $19 million, but the final award notification provided only $9 million, a 50% reduction. She notes that DHS offered no substantive explanation beyond a vague, per DHS directive. The lack of transparency is central to her argument. When federal agencies make unilateral decisions without justification, it undermines the ability of Congress to oversee funding and erodes trust between federal and local authorities. The real-world consequences of these funding cuts are stark. Counterterrorism grants fund training, planning, equipment, and interagency coordination, all essential elements of national preparedness. Arbitrary cuts directly reduce operational capacity, limit the ability of law enforcement to prevent attacks, and leave communities more vulnerable. POU emphasizes that these decisions threaten public safety not as a hypothetical, but as a concrete consequence of mismanaged and politicized funding decisions. By detailing the critical functions supported by these grants, she demonstrates that this is not a budgetary technicality, but a matter of protecting lives and ensuring preparedness against evolving threats. Finally, POU's remarks highlight the broader implications of administrative behavior on public trust and institutional legitimacy. When agencies like DHS ignore legal requirements, fail to justify decisions, and selectively reduce funding based on partisan affiliation, the effect is not merely political frustration. It creates widespread skepticism about the fairness, reliability, and integrity of federal law enforcement programs. POU underscores that restoring transparency, accountability, and adherence to statutory and constitutional obligations is essential not only to maintain operational effectiveness, but also to preserve the credibility of the federal government in the eyes of state, local, and public stakeholders.